The conference room at NATO headquarters in Brussels fell silent. It was October 2016, and military strategists from across Europe and North America had gathered for an international defense symposium on unconventional warfare. When the Philippine delegation presented their case study on Filipino guerrilla tactics, Colonel Klaus Richter, Germany's most respected military strategist with 30 years of experience and multiple publications on modern warfare doctrine, let out a dismissive scoff that carried through the room. "Filipino guerrilla methods," Colonel Richter said in his precise German-accented English, looking at the young Filipino officer standing beside the presentation screen. "You want us to study tactics from World War II, jungle ambushes, and village hideouts?" He adjusted his glasses with barely concealed condescension. "Modern warfare is about coordinated operations, satellite intelligence, drone surveillance, network sea-centric combat. What do Filipino guerrilla methods offer? Outdated hit-and-run tactics that worked against an occupying force 70 years ago. These are historical curiosities, not applicable modern military strategies." The room packed with NATO officers, defense analysts, and military academics from prestigious institutions erupted in murmurs of agreement and some uncomfortable silence. Colonel Richter continued warming to his critique. "I have spent 3 decades studying military strategy. I have published papers on modern asymmetric warfare, analyzed conflicts from Iraq to Afghanistan. Filipino guerrilla tactics are quaint, hiding in jungles using improvised weapons, relying on local support. These worked against a 1940s Japanese occupation force that had overstretched supply lines and no air superiority. But against a modern military with satellite tracking, thermal imaging, real-time intelligence, these methods are obsolete." Several European and American officers nodded approvingly. Colonel Richter gestured to a complex battlefield diagram on the screen behind him, showing modern network sea-centric warfare. "This is 21st century military strategy. Integrated command and control, real-time data sharing, precision strikes coordinated across air, land, and sea domains. What does Filipino guerrilla warfare offer? Village networks and jungle trails. There is no comparison in sophistication between modern military doctrine and resistance tactics from another era." Captain Miguel Reyes stood quietly beside the presentation screen, his face calm despite the public dismissal. At 35 years old, he was a third-generation Philippine Army officer whose grandfather had fought as a guerrilla against Japanese occupation and whose father had studied counterinsurgency operations in Mindanao. His mentor, Colonel Eduardo Santos, a retired Philippine Army officer who had spent 40 years studying Filipino military history and tactics, stood silently in the back of the room. Miguel had anticipated this reaction. Western military establishments often dismissed Filipino tactical innovations as primitive or outdated, not understanding that principles proven effective through centuries of resistance fighting contained lessons that modern militaries had forgotten. What Colonel Richter didn't understand was that he was about to receive an education that would challenge 30 years of his strategic assumptions. "Colonel Richter," Miguel said respectfully in clear English, "would you be interested in a practical demonstration? A war game scenario where your modern military doctrine faces Filipino guerrilla principles. If our methods are truly obsolete, your conventional forces should easily prevail." Colonel Richter's expression shifted from amusement to mild interest. A war game between modern military doctrine and guerrilla tactics. He looked around at the assembled officers, several of whom seemed intrigued. "Very well, but understand, I will design a scenario using current military capabilities, satellite reconnaissance, air support, mechanized infantry, real-time communications. Your guerrilla tactics will be operating exactly as they would in reality without these advantages. The outcome should demonstrate clearly why modern militaries don't rely on outdated resistance methods." The room buzzed with interest. A live demonstration comparing modern military doctrine with historical guerrilla tactics. This would either validate conventional wisdom or produce unexpected insights. The symposium organizers arranged for a sophisticated military simulation, a computer-modeled war game used by NATO for training exercises. The scenario: a well-equipped conventional force of 200 soldiers with modern equipment hunting a guerrilla force of 50 fighters in a forested mountainous terrain with scattered villages. Colonel Richter commanded the conventional force with full modern capabilities. Satellite reconnaissance updating every 30 minutes, drone surveillance, encrypted communications, armored vehicles, and air support available on request.